As part of Detroit Public Television's ongoing coverage of Detroit after bankruptcy, American Black Journal is airing stories on 3 historic neighborhoods. Today, we conclude the series with a report on a West Side neighborhood that prides itself on being a very diverse and united community. Here's a look at the area known as Warrendale.
To a very large degree, neighborhoods in Detroit all have their own unique flavor to them. Part of Warrendale's charm has almost been that we're the place that nobody knows about.
So, geez, I'm drawing a blank really on it. I mean, as an East Sider, this is the far West Side. So, curious thing is, why are certain areas on the map and other areas aren't?
It's an area that is separated, isolated in a lot of ways from the rest of Detroit. People who know Detroit well often will find that there are places within the city limits that they just don't go to. And I think that's true of Warrendale for a lot of people.
My name is Frank Nemechek. I was born and raised in the area. I'm a past president of the Warrendale Community Organization. And since 2005, I've published the Warrendale Detroit blog, which covers the neighborhood. Warrendale absolutely has its own very distinct personality to it. It had, in its earlier days, back in the 40s and 50s, a very strong mix of Italian and Polish immigrants to it. In recent years, you've seen a lot of spillover migration from Arabs moving in from Dearborn, Latinos moving in from Southwest Detroit, Blacks moving in from Brightmoor to the north.
I grew up in Southwest Detroit, started the business 24 years ago, out of my house, catering. It's all my grandmother's recipes. I looked for a building probably about 15 years ago, and I wanted to always come back to Detroit, so the Warrendale community was probably the perfect location for me to start.
We were talking about late 70s, early 80s. One, you could walk down the street, feel completely safe at all times. Because of the ethnic mix of the place, I mean, you would usually hear 2 or 3 different languages being spoken.
It's diverse, very diverse. It's a very united community. Unfortunately, it did go through its really hard times. Used to have a lot of police officers live in the area.
Once upon a time, anybody who worked for the city of Detroit had to live within the city limits. And a lot of police officers and firefighters lived in this area. And that led to it being called Copper Canyon. Then, of course, the law changed where they were no longer required to live within the city limits. And that in turn led to most of them leaving in a relatively short period of time. It was a little bit of a setback because obviously when you have a whole bunch of police officers in an area, that in and of itself is a natural deterrent to crime. Warrendale, because we're surrounded on the 3 sides by suburbs with a freeway going right through the middle of it, has always been a convenient spot for city-based drug dealers to do business with suburban customers. And so in many ways, it's almost been like the Walmart of narcotics. And then of course, there was also the housing crisis, the mortgage crisis that just completely decimated the area. We went from, I think it was like 90 some odd vacant homes out of more than 9,000 to 6 months later, having more than 800. That's kind of resulted in almost a rock bottom effect there. And then in recent years, I mean, we've actually in the past year or two, we've really seen some very real and very tangible things that have started to happen in the area.
After being here 12 years, I had to leave for things out of my control. My son graduated from Eastern about 5 years ago, and we knew he wanted his own location, so we knew he wanted to go back to the city of Detroit. And fortunately, at the time we were looking to open our second location, this was available to us, and we were able to come back, and we've been back here for a little over 3 years. We are part of the Warrendale Community Association, and we also participate in a lot of the community events, the schools, the cleanup. So, you know, it's not just a business for us, it's our neighborhood also. Social media is very important. You have to be, you know, involved.
One of the reasons why I started the blog back in 2005 is because there was a lot of stuff happening in the area that unfortunately the mainstream media was just completely not covering at all. And so I wanted to give voice to that. Rouge Park is the largest park in Detroit. If I remember correctly, it's almost twice the size of Belle Isle. There's, you know, a few other very old buildings inside of the park that have been there forever. Brennan Pools is an historical side note. Was actually built for the Olympic tryouts back in the 1920s. The Detroit Police Department used to have a horse barn that they had for their mountain division inside of Rouge Park. Well, during Kwame Kilpatrick's tenure, the department closed that, and that led to a group of volunteers who came on in who just took it over. They're keeping it up. They have their own horses there. So, my blog, we try to bring people together to kind of, use social media to bring people together to solve problems. We've used it to raise funds for different community efforts throughout the years. We're bringing volunteers on some of the neighborhood cleanups, and also bringing people together for even the simple things like the monthly pizza party that I do. Grace CC Pizza, which has been in the neighborhood since the 1960s, advertises on my blog, and they actually pay me in pizza, which is at times better than cash. Gracie's has always been one of those neighborhood gathering places. There's sometimes called the third space. It's not quite public, it's not quite private, but it's that great place for people to just come together to gather, to talk, to catch up on one another's lives. And it builds up some kind of really like a neighborhood bond between people.
Maybe in the case of Warrendale, it's a project whose time has come. I guess in some ways, this sort of a project can be a way in which a neighborhood mobilizes, a neighborhood comes together.
I think Warrendale was really hit during the economy, and I think they just need a little extra push or more believe in them. A lot of businesses did leave, a lot of residents left. What's so unique about it, we have the colleges in the area, we have Ford Motors across the street, and then you have the community, which is very diverse. And I just believe that it's going to come back, and I think believing in it and being one of the first ones to come back to the city shows that it's kind of start the path to come back for Warrendale.
There's one particular house about 6 blocks away from here that I once thought could never really be saved. It was fire damaged and neglected. You could stand on the sidewalk and see daylight at the other end. But there was one particular couple who bought the place a couple years ago for obscenely cheap through the city's land bank authority. They poured a not inconsiderable amount of money into it, and now you have a really large family just living there. I mean, I stop and talk to them from time to time on some of my walks through the neighborhood, and I guess that could serve as a metaphor for the neighborhood. I mean, there are some things about it that you might look at and you think, oh my God, there's no hope for the area. But yet you have these instances where hope seems to come from hopeless situations.
We want to thank the funders who helped make this Detroit Neighborhood Series possible. They are the Michigan Humanities Council and Renaissance Journalism. Also, a special thanks to our content partners in the Detroit Journalism Cooperative. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Plus, you can also hear our program on WDET 1019 FM. We'll see you next time.